Is that the last hard copy? Taken. Oh, sorry, Cliff. But yes, you can also access it on your phone. And we're going to actually wait until 11:15 because we do have people that are joining us online. So we're going to wait, be merry, talk to your neighbor, all that good stuff. Ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to begin. Thank you for your patience. We just want to make sure that everybody at home is connected as well. Good morning. Thank you all for coming out this morning. I was surprised by the snow. I don't know. I just don't watch the news, so I don't know what's going on. But apparently we got snow, and I'm so glad you all are here safely. Thank you for those of you who are joining at home. We have Shirley Morton that's going to be monitoring Facebook. So if you're joining us on Facebook, if you could please just type your name right now in the comments so that we know that you are watching. And then we have Mary Newcomb monitoring YouTube. That's what we were waiting to connect on. So we are good now. So if you are viewing on YouTube, if you could please also in the comment section just state your name so that we can make sure that we have a quorum. And as far as I know, we do, because we have it here and on Facebook. So hopefully we're good, all right? So yes, if you're at home viewing, please comment now with your name. If you also are at home, please, when you ask a question on the comment section, please make sure that you're very clear and concise about your question. That will help us just communicate that a little bit better. And also be patient with getting a response. We good over there, Newcombs? All right, yeah. Okay, that's okay, thank you. All right, so we have some rules for discussion. This is just the same as a couple weeks ago, that I will have you guys come up to these two mics when we do have a conversation. Please keep your comments to 2 minutes. We have Patty Enzi here who's helping with, she's got the skills. Thank you, Patty, to keep us on time. Just a reminder that everybody may speak once before anybody speaks twice, and this is per topic. And I will be contacting or being in communication with Mary and Shirley as far as the online comments go. If we do need a vote, and we will today for several items, we will do a show of hands here. And then those of you at home who are viewing on YouTube and Facebook, please state yes or no or abstain. All right, and we have Heather, our clerk, ready to go. So we're going to call this meeting to order. Becky, could you lead us in prayer?
And let us pray. Loving and gracious God, we thank you for this day, for pulling us through COVID and all the challenges that has presented to this congregation, for our ability to stay connected and our willingness to connect even more. And as we prepare for our meeting today, we ask you to bless us. We ask you to open our ears and our minds and our hearts so that we can see our vision for 2022. And we pray that it may satisfy you. And we ask this in your many names. Amen.
Thank you, Becky. All right, if you all could please stand and read this together. Hopefully you can see it. We promise to walk together in Christian love, cherishing the presence of God the Creator, Jesus the Word, and the Holy Spirit, our counselor and comforter, seeking God's will for our faith community, the human family, and all of creation. We agree to give witness to the life and teachings of Jesus, our risen Savior, and through our actions and ideals, invite the world to a deeper love. With the Spirit as our guide, we promise to be faithful in worship in support of First Congregational United Church of Christ. We aspire to offer all that we are and all that we have for the fulfillment of God's realm of justice and peace. Thank you. Here's our agenda for today. Hopefully we'll move through things. All right, so first up, if you look at the very back few pages of the annual report, you will see the minutes from last year's annual meeting that happened on Zoom, if you can remember that. A little different now. So we first need to approve those. Can I get a motion? Thank you, Phil. A second? Thank you, Desiree. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And then the extra handout was the congregational meeting that we had 2 weeks ago. So that, of course, wasn't able to be placed in the annual report. So thank you, Amber, for getting that to us. And we needed a motion for approval of these minutes. Thank you, Phil. Second, Dieter. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, moving on to nominations. So this year, our nominating committee consisted of myself, Cliff Carlson, Carol Freeman, Wes Llewellyn, and Steve Skippers. We currently have still an opening for moderator and vice moderator. Heather Carlson has agreed to serve again as clerk of council. Barb Gus is going to be starting her second year on council, and we welcome Diane Moore to serving as an at-large member on council. Remember that the other seats on our council consist of the chairs of the boards, so that's why you don't see those right now, because those are still to be determined. All right, so outreach and mission. Susie Llewellyn and Sarah Wynn have 1 more year left. The Hammonds and Christine Nelson are starting their second year. And Aubrey Mears has agreed to serve yet again another 3-year term. So thank you to Aubrey. And we still have 1 opening on outreach and mission. For spiritual engagement, Sella Armstrong is in her final year, and she's also agreed to serve as chair. Thank you, Sella, and happy belated birthday. Gotta throw that in there. Shirley Morton and Marcia Renault are on their second year, and we welcome Nancy Henning, Pam Went, Mary Curry, and Becca Peterson for starting their term on spiritual engagement. All right, so for CE, Abby Stickle is in her second year now, and I believe she has agreed to again serve as chair. And we welcome Michelle Duckett, Desiree Grace, and Caro Aletsko. And we still have 3 openings on the CE board. And then for building and finance, Phil Koenig is in his final term. Bill Henning is in his second year. And we welcome Jeff Nelson, Christy Bailey, Joanna Dye, Connie Leader, and Steve Skippers to this board. All right, and then here's our list of people that are done with their terms, not necessarily going away, because these individuals might have agreed to, of course, serve on another board. So Pam Went, for example, is done with outreach and mission, but then she's going to be serving on another board. Christy Bailey is going to be on building and finance. Lucy and Joanna Dye, thank you also for your service on spiritual engagement. Christian education, Tanya, Carrie, Amanda, Angie, and Kim are all done with their term on CE. And then Lane and Jeff, Neil and Delma from building and finance. And then Russ Armstrong and myself both came on council at the same time, and we are done with our terms as well. So I need a motion to approve the nominations as listed. Nancy Henning. Second? Katie Harley. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. All right, on to a possible addition of Red Wagon to council. So last summer, we began discussions with Amanda Peterson, who is the director over at Red Wagon, about how to better form our relationship with Red Wagon, who has, well, that organization has been coexisting with us in this building for many, many, many years. And so on August 10th, after a couple months of discussion on this topic, Council actually approved Red Wagon as a mission of the church with a separate board. So Council is bringing to you today the possibility of actually including Red Wagon in our governance structure. So right now, if you think about Council and how it's formed, we have CE, SE, Building and Finance, and Outreach and Mission. So our proposal is to then add Red Wagon and for them to have representation on our church council board. So the motion is to recognize that Red Wagon is a mission of the church and therefore is represented at council beginning this current year by a church member seated on the Red Wagon board. Jeff. We have to, yeah. Thank you, Jeff.
Sorry about that. The question I have is, are we making a change to the Constitution with this?
Yes, this would then go to having to change it in the Constitution. Yes, because there is nothing in the Constitution regarding Red Wagon. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Patty. Can I get okay, Jeff. Jeff. Say that. The motion is coming from council.
If the motion is coming from council, it does not require a second.
All right. Now discussion. And to answer your question, yes, this would require a constitutional change. There are many constitutional changes that are going to be coming up in the docket because, like, for instance, Lindsay's position isn't really well defined in there because hers is a new position that's been created. And then, of course, Red Wagon. Of course, if there are any more questions, how about online? Do we have any questions about Red Wagon specifically online? Josh Dyer.
I guess I just have a question about Red Wagon. It's been approved as a mission. Is that mission defined? Like, do we know what that mission is?
Red Wagon serving as a mission?
Mm-hmm.
That's a good question. We don't have that defined as far as council goes because that's something we wanted to put in place in the Constitution coming up. So it's going to require work. So this is just the first step in going in that direction. Yeah, absolutely.
I also think the understanding, Josh, when council kicked this around, and correct me because I may not have this right, is that Red Wagon's mission, which is clearly defined, right, is in alignment with the current mission of this congregation, so it seemed like an easy add. And so I guess I would say that they thought it was an alignment or they wouldn't have gone this route. Does that answer the question at all or no? Maybe? That seems about right. Okay. That's about as clear as I get. So.
Any more discussion on Red Wagon? Steve Skibbers.
I like Josh's observation greatly, and I think what would really be bad is if the Red Wagon mission and what we thought the mission to be were two different things. And so at some point, we need to make sure we're aligned, however we do that within the process.
I believe so. Thank you, Steve. Lane.
I guess piggybacking on the whole mission, is council making sure that when they do this, they're going to pay attention to that it is in alignment with the church? Because if it's not, it could potentially lead to like maybe a tax filing obligation.
We did some.
Can we have them state their name for the record?
Sure. I was trying to do that, but do you want them to? Yes. Okay, so Lane.
It's Lane Premsky. Do you need me to ask the question again?
Okay, all right. So we had some discussions. Phil, you checked into some of the background legalities of doing this as well. And I don't know, we did look into the tax implications. Phil, yes, you probably should come up and speak. Here.
We looked at the prospect of making the Red Wagon a self-sustaining, like a subsidiary of our church, concerned with liability issues and some tax issues. We examined the insurance and Amanda said, look, you know, I don't want to be separated from the church. I want to be a part of the church. And therefore we left Red Wagon where it is now. It is a mission of the church. I think it's fairly obvious that it's a child care mission. Which our church provides and people pay for.
Thank you, Phil. Lane, anything else? Any more discussion on Red Wagon and the motion presented? All right. I'd like to call the question. All in favor? Opposed? One? One opposed, Heather? All right. Abstain. I always forget that one. Mary Newcomb, thank you. 2 abstain. 2. Okay. Thank you all. Motion carries. Steve Skippers is here to talk a little bit about our endowment processes and what that committee has been doing this past year. Would you like to use that mic?
I would.
Okay, and then I'll click when needed.
So first off, some high-level numbers. We started 2021 with 3.1 million. We ended 2021 with 3.1 million. During that time, $180,000 was withdrawn for the purposes that we use the endowment fund for. So I'm going to talk about 3 things today within my 10 minutes. One is the status of the 3 resolutions from last year's annual meeting. And then I'm going to talk about the performance of the fund in a little bit of detail because we split it across. It spent the first 5 months of the year at First Midwest Bank, and then the remainder at Vanguard. And then finally, I'll talk about next steps, and I'll be asking for approval of another ad hoc board for this year. So, we were tasked with reviewing the investment options and recommending an investment bank or company. We did that study, had a request for a proposal, went through it, the 5 members of that group. We recommended Vanguard, and that was approved by the council. So once it was recommended and approved, then we worked to move the funds. We closed out the First Midwest account around the beginning of May. Then we were tasked with creating fund transaction controls and security processes. And where we came to was, and I hope you can read all these, but I'll read them for you in case it's not visible in the back. No computer or internet withdrawals. It's by physical letter only. Requires 2 of the 3 authorized agents must sign a letter that's on FCC letterhead, and that's from the endowment committee only. Withdrawals by a physical check only that comes to the FCC office address only, so you can't send it somewhere else. If you're going to withdraw more than 5%, then we need minutes from a congregational vote authorizing that. Finally, Building and Finance has a monthly review of Vanguard transactions. This is a higher level of visibility than we had with First Midwest. So every transaction is reviewable, and we also are going to review the fund accounts and provide an update to council monthly. And then finally, our financial manager, Sarah, has an internet view to all accounts. So any day, anytime, she can open it up and see what's going on. So that 3rd resolution is work in process, and that'll be part of my request to the congregation. So when we transferred the funds to Vanguard, there was 3.1 million. We took out 153 from the Vanguard account, and the value on December 31st was 3.1 million. Okay, so the first withdrawal for the purposes of, which I'm going to say is the 5% authorized, which goes into the general budget, or what I call the operating budget, was from First Midwest. The other 3 were from Vanguard. It was $108,000 if you round that up. We took out $46,000 per the 5-year authorized building project for a total withdrawal of $153,000. And this is where it got complicated as I started to dig into this and as I started to talk to staff. So who's involved with all these transactions? Well, any member here, when you make a donation to the fund or you use the brokerage account to take appreciated stock and magnify your giving to the church by not giving a portion of that appreciation to Uncle Sam, has to go through the endowment fund. And I would highly urge you, if you've got some stock that's appreciated that's burning a hole in your pocket, this is a great place to really give it. So there are 2 staff involved. There are at least 6 people who do counting. There's building and finance, there's endowment committee, church council, any stockbroker who's holding that stock for you, and then finally Vanguard. So there's some drafts on how to gift that stock, how to give stock or cash to the endowment, the 5% authorization, the special votes that we do, and then we have recommended constitutional additions to establish an endowment committee members with duties and terms. And then finally, the FCC funds communication and a review of the one fund accounts history with reconciliation of deposits and spending. Boy, that went way long in that last one. But the point being is that what we've discovered, what I've discovered is I looked at the one fund accounts, and those are in your annual report. There are 8 reports with a 1, 8 funds with a 1 in front of the fund. Those funds are the responsibility of building and finance to review. 8's probably more than we need. The most immediate problem I see is that there's a 1 fund for capital and there's a 1 fund for short-term projects. Those have gotten intermixed, and I'm sure they've been intermixed with regard to withdrawals from the endowment fund, and they may be intermixed with regarding the uses of those funds, meaning they're not in the right box. And so this is going to require a review of the payments of the church to our suppliers and our vendors to see if they got in the right fund, and also a review of our withdrawals to make sure those went in the right fund. In 2020, I'll tell you right up front, what should have gone into the capital projects fund, much of that was taken out during that year went into the short-term projects fund. So if you're looking at that and trying to reconcile it, you're going to say, wait a minute, where's that 100,000 or so? And you can't do a simple subtraction because the short-term projects fund includes gifts from the members, and that might have been the intent of that fund. But we've got to go back through these and straighten them out. So no big deal. So I think this first one doesn't require a motion because it was an ad hoc committee for 1 year anyway, but I think a vote of thanks or some applause for the members of the endowment committee. And thank you. Now for 2022, another ad hoc committee, please. Phil, Jeff, myself, to continue the work of writing the transaction process and to how we would load those into the Constitution or bylaws and present those for congregational vote for 2023. What they're going to do is we're going to reconcile the funds, test the draft processes, and then submit for inclusion in the Constitution and bylaws.
So we have a motion on the floor. Thank you, Nancy. A second? Dieter, thank you. Any more discussion? Jeff?
This may be a more general question, but we're talking about Constitution changes here again, and then we're also talking about bylaw changes, which at this very instant, we don't have any bylaws.
0.
So there may be a bigger issue that comes up here, and I think it'd be great to come up with specifics about what needs to change in the Constitution to put this in. I think we need to do the same kind of thing with the Red Wagon stuff. And I guess my question is, do we have an approach to do that yet?
To make constitutional changes? No, we don't even have a constitution committee like we did back in 2014. So that will be an ad hoc committee that will need to be formed probably this year because we're starting to see that things are kind of piling up in regards to what we're doing and what our Constitution says or what our views or our wishes are to make our church better that are different than what the Constitution states. So yes, that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. Yes, Dana.
Yes, a more general question just about how y'all manage the funds. When you want to buy or sell assets, do you just as a committee get together and decide that and then give instructions? Do you have a stockbroker who gives you recommendations? Do you work with a financial advisor? I'm just would like to know that, please.
Steve.
The There is investment policy that was established by Building and Finance. I think the most recent version is 04, maybe 11. I don't have the date, but there are two. One has been superseded. That investment policy talks about being prudent, conservative with the funds, and establishes a 70-30 mix of stock, equities to bonds. When it was with First Midwest, the majority of the money was with index funds, with some stock picking that First Midwest did. With Vanguard, the money is in two funds, a 60-40 fund and an 80-20 fund balance so that we get to that 70-30 mix. So we are not picking individual stocks or having a recommendation for individual stocks. It's what is called passive indexing to the market. So we don't try and beat the market. We don't try and be smarter than the market. We ride the continuing growth of the market, which is a vote in basically the U.S. economy's long-term ability to keep growing. So nothing specific. It doesn't require what I would say any kind of active management of the fund.
Okay, so it's just a matter of going with the index funds.
We go straight with the indexes,
Okay.
And that does a lot of good things for us, I think. So a bit more detail than maybe people want. One of those funds returned 15%, which was the 80-20 fund. One of those funds returned 10%, which was the 60-40 fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? And Steve has done a lot of work, the whole group. I'm going to go back just one slide here to all of these different processes. I mean, a lot of work has been put into that, conversations with the office staff, and I think that will more clearly define how to go about contributing and how to make things just more even keel. So back to the motion. Any more discussion on this second motion up here? All right. Yep, thank you. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Thank you, the motion carries. And we have one last motion. Steve, do you want to talk about this last one?
Okay, so the motion that we approved was for the appointment of the ad hoc committee. And now the second motion is to basically task that committee to reconcile the one funds, test the draft processes, and come back next year with a recommendation for how the endowment committee fits into the church constitution and the work of the church.
Motion is on the floor. Thank you, Phil. Second, Desiree. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Steve, for your hard work on that. Yes.
So Connie Leader asks on YouTube about the fees that are designated for the endowment on pages 28 and 32, wanting to know what they are.
The fees on page 20, what was it, 23? 32.
Is that the right page?
The $9,175.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Oh, that's the Peterson Scholarship.
Yeah. The fees on page 28 are the Peterson Memorial Fund,
Just to be clear.
which is a separate fund from the endowment,
Right.
and is still at First Midwest. So that represents, it kind of reinforces why we went with passive funds versus staying at First Midwest.
So Connie, just to be clear, that was in regards to the Peterson Scholarship Fund. So if you have further questions, please go ahead and put those in the comments section. Page 32? Oh, okay, endowment is 32. So the fees, the $6,120.
Yes, so the fees paid represent the 5 months that it was at First Midwest. I don't have the numbers. The fees we pay with Vanguard is 0.13% of the total invested, so if somebody's got a quick calculator,
considerably less.
It's about a tenth of what we paid at First
Sure.
Midwest. So
Sure.
did that, so a further follow-up to that.
All right. Shirley?
Because Facebook is a little bit behind, this is old news kind of. I'm having a question on how many members are attending the meeting?
We have 45 here in person, and then on Facebook,
We have 15 now.
we have 15 on Facebook, and YouTube, we have 2.
Okay. And then I have another question.
Sure.
This is from Linda Shear.
Yep.
I reviewed the FCC Constitution and also Robert's Rules of Order and see no place where a motion does not need a second. Maybe someone on the council can tell us where a motion made by the council to the entire congregational meeting does not need a second. Otherwise, the vote taken earlier is not valid.
Yep. So, right, so we have a whole committee that had made that motion, and so according to a couple of our experts here, there is no an initial requirement of a motion. A second. Okay. Yes, thank you, Shirley. I appreciate it. All right. All right, we're moving on. Jeff Newcomb is going to talk about some of our building projects that happened in our past 5-year plan and what's to come. You want to use this mic?
Sure, I'll use this mic. So we've had a 5-year plan, and we're kind of at the tail end of that. And so part of it might be, well, what have we done with that 5-year plan? We had a plan for $877,500. Where did it go is a valid question. And we had some things that we planned out, and we had some things that came up that we had to deal with. So, new roof on the education wing, that was something that we kind of saw coming up, and that was one that we had in there. The men's bathroom renovation, that's something that snuck up on us. Replacing the education wing HVAC, that was also in the plan, and we did that. Roof repairs in the main building, that was one that was in there, and we did that. The chiller replacement was planned, and we accomplished that. Replacing the fire panel, that was one that was kind of snuck up on us. Tuck pointing, we've had some tuck pointing work done, and we have more that needs to be done. We had some tuck pointing work that had to be done over in the education wing. We had water coming in. We had the M word over there. And so we've taken care of that. Asbestos removal in the boiler room. This is part of the heating project to replace the heating system. First, we had to get the asbestos out on the old boiler to replace it. And the plans were this past summer that was going to happen. Well, we couldn't get parts. They couldn't get the pumps to pump the water around the building to distribute the heat. Well, without the pumps, the system wouldn't work, wouldn't heat the building, so we had to backtrack. And so we got the asbestos out before we were informed that they couldn't get the pumps. So we had to put some temporary insulation. And we had boiler repairs that needed to be done on the old boiler that we had to go ahead and do. We are in a position of not enough money for the pieces that we have broken off to do in the 5-year plan. So we have this heating system replacement, and we knew that was going to be a big number, and so we kept pushing it off, saying, you know, we're tending to take out, the plan was $177,000 a year, and so we knew it would be a lot more than that, so we said, well, we're going to push that boiler, the heating system replacement, to the end of the 5-year plan. We did that. We left the money in the endowment as long as we could to get as much interest as we could out of it. And then we got the price on the heating system and said, oh, well, we're now in a position of not enough money in the 5-year plan to finish out the heating system. We did LED lighting in the office in Red Wagon. That is something that was in the plan, and we have accomplished that. Parking lot ceiling. The parking lot is a continual thing that needs maintenance and money. And so we did some sealing this year, and there will be more work coming up with the parking lot in not very long. Mudjacking the sidewalks, that was something we absolutely had to do because we have people walking into the building and we do not want to have trip hazards out there. So that's one that snuck up on us. So, as I said, we need more money yet for the boiler replacement. Our best guess on that is around $167,000. And again, there's still work that's being done and that's capital for the building, so we've been using that endowment money for that. We've got additional tuck pointing and brickwork that needs to be done. We have an estimate on that that's about $180,000. Parking lot resurfacing, again, with the parking lot, but what we kind of did this year was kind of a Band-Aid, honestly. We've got plaster. I mean, if you look up in the balcony at the ends, or if you were to actually walk up the stairs that you're not supposed to, you would see on the floor what's going on up there. Things are coming off the wall. Repair the windows, and that's the crank out windows, and it's not all the windows, but it's trying to pick the ones that we use the most and fix those windows. We've got carpet in the first floor coming down on the stairs from upstairs all the way down to the basement. That carpet needs to be replaced. We've got leaks in the bell tower, and we've got other leaks, and we're trying to hit the worst ones first, kind of thing. We have a plan to buy out the solar panels. When we got the solar panels in, we didn't pay a dime for them, but the plan was to use the savings from the solar panels to buy them out about 8 years later. Is that right, Josh? Yes. So we're putting that in the plan. And then I guess kind of a little bit of a long story, but we have had for many years a member of our church that gave us a really, really good price on the yard work here at the church. We had no idea how good a price it was till she passed away. And then we said, okay, we'll just go get about the same price, not even close. So we've been kind of working through that, trying to find ways to save money. And one way we thought we could do that is to actually get a lawn tractor. And our current maintenance guy would love to have more hours, and it'd be just a whole lot cheaper to pay him to mow the lawn. And we get more personalized service that way. So that's, and I've also got other emergencies down there because things will come up that we're not planning on. The building is old. Anybody that's got an old house can sympathize. So in 2018, we said we need $887,500. We're through that money. And so this year we're saying, just for items that we've got a list of, which you've got in the annual report, there's to do, and that's, honestly, that's just a grab out of the spreadsheet that we have, that we're trying to keep things as we're going. So if you look at it really closely, you'll see some items in there that don't have money in there for them, or one might say done already because it had to be done. So at this point, we're looking for another 5-year plan, and we're saying that our best guess at this point is $600,000 for that. And that would be money that's coming out of the endowment in addition to the 5% that we've been pulling out for, I want to say, general operating for the church.
Jeff, can I ask, Becca Peterson, for the record. Jeff, can I ask about some of the water problems that have happened over the years in the basement? I didn't see them as the list of projects that had been accomplished. Has that been accomplished, or like what are the projected colossal floods?
The one I think that you saw was the water level in the window and the window well?
3 separate floods where we had to scrap everything in the CE wing, and insurance came and we got new. And while we were here, we saw water up the window wells in all the basements, just rising.
At least one of them over there.
Yeah.
So when we redid the roof in the education wing, there was one of the downspouts that instead of the water coming down the spout and out, the water fell out from on high and went into the window well. And we had a gully washer, or whatever you want to call it, and I think Becca was the one that saw water up on the outside of the window in the window well, a water level up, like you're looking in a, I don't even know, a bathtub or something, you know. And, but when we got the roof redone, that downspout was taken care of. There was another one where we had water that came in closer to the kitchen, and there were some issues with the downspouts there, and Jim fixed that for us. And so that solved that problem. There have been issues before with sewers backing up. In downtown Moline, we've still got some areas, I think, that are combined sanitary and storm sewers. So when it rains a lot, the sanitary sewer gets backed up, and it has backed up into our basement. We have valves on the sanitary sewer now that are designed to shut when that happens.
Patty NZ, for the lawn tractor, because I know you also talked about needing people to help with the snow removal this year. Yes. Are you also going to include a blade on the lawn tractor for that tractor to also purpose itself in the winter for snow removal?
That's not a bad idea. Not at all. And I will tell you that we want ideas from the congregation. This is our church, you know, so please, more things like ideas.
I have a follow-up question to Becca's regarding the flooding. Are those valves manual, or do they respond automatically to rising water? The valve.
An engineer question from an engineer. I love this.
Sorry.
Mary will have to tell me if I go on too far. So they are automatic valves. They are driven by the water pressure in the pipe. So if the power goes out too, these valves will still work. They're knife edge valves that work off a float. So when the water comes back up, the float goes up and shuts the valve.
You go ahead, Jeff.
We'll talk later.
So, and I'm sorry, Steve Skippers, we are downslope from the majority of Moline, so what happens is the flow of water from uphill is just too fast for the pipes past us, and so when we have these heavy 2 to 3, 4, 5 inch rains, we're at risk then of taking that water into the basement.
Yeah, it's happened before. We've had actual claims on our insurance from it years ago. And it got to the point where the insurance company basically came to us and said, you will have some kind of alarm that goes off when there's water in the basement. And we do have that now. We've got battery-powered alarms that'll go off if there's water in the basement. They're also on the internet, so they can give out, if the internet's still working, if we still have power in the building, we could get notifications that come out that way too.
Pastor Becky, the battery-operated alarms, since we've had a change in custodial, I'm guessing the new guy doesn't know anything about that, and so just a communication piece about who's monitoring that, making sure the batteries actually work.
Yours truly gets notifications on that, but I don't have a key to get in, so there's a disconnect there that we need to work on. And I'm willing to do that, and there's a passcode for that.
Do you want to call a motion from Building and Finance? Do you guys have a motion?
We will make the motion that we pull $600,000 out of the endowment as a 5-year plan to deal with the items listed in the previous slide. Pardon? Oh, not on an equal draw per year basis, just as a clarification, because that question did come up in our discussions. Oh. Okay. Do we need a second on that before we?
Yeah. You're at a stopping point. I have a question about the bride's room being flooded from Shabana Kidd. Siobhan Kidd asks, wasn't the bride's room flooded? That would be the Plymouth room.
Right.
So that's her question.
Is that a recent thing? Because we've had floods, we've had several different rounds of floods in the basement. So I don't know which specific time she's talking about, but it was a long time ago, she said. Okay.
So Siobhan, if you could elaborate a little bit more on that question. As you know, we've had multiple floods in the basement, and so we just want to make sure that we're addressing your question correctly. So we have a motion. We don't need a second. Any more discussion on the matter? Steve, can you come up to the mic?
Because we've had a member question whether we need a second or not, I would ask that we just provide a second to that motion.
Could I get a second to thank you, Bill Henning? All right, all in favor? Opposed? Abstain? The motion carries. Thank you so very much, Mr. Jeff. Oops. The next couple slides are slightly updated from 2 weeks ago when we had our congregational meeting in regards to the budget. This slide shows our income, which is the blue line, the bottom line for those viewing at home, and our expenses up above. So we do have just little tiny change, and you will see that here in just a moment. Oh, Shirley, do you have a question?
Yes, because Facebook is behind.
Sure.
This has to, the question from Jeff Griffith is the proposed $600,000 over 5 years total?
That would be correct, Jeff.
I'm sorry.
We've already closed the,
Yes.
we've already approved the motion, so.
So we need to move slower is what you're saying.
Yeah, because these come in.
Hey, Jeff, the answer is yes. Shh. Off the record. Don't put that in the minutes. Okay, so this slide shows our expenses. Okay, thank you, Patty. Our expenses above and our pledges below. And so we discussed this a couple weeks ago. This is the bottom line in your annual report that we are sitting at right now at possibly approving a deficit budget of negative $96,856. Becky.
Point of information on that, I think it's important. I may have this wrong again, so I know a million of you will correct me, but this budget was also created on an income of pledges from last year. And we are about $30,000 below that right now, which actually means in real money that we're looking at a deficit closer to $120,000.
Correct.
Does that make sense?
This
to
is
everyone,
based off
right?
of obtaining $250,000 in pledges,
And
we are
we don't
not
have
at
that.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call the question. I'm going to motion that we approve, sorry.
Can we just take a moment and see if there's any questions from Facebook?
Oh, sure, thanks. Let's wait. I was going to make the motion, yes. Okay, so I would like to make a motion to approve a deficit budget of $96,856. Thank you, Phil. I'm waiting slowly. Any questions? Discussion? Here comes Jeff, both Jeffs. We got Jeff and we got Steve. Let's get Jeff Nelson up here.
So when we have a deficit budget, sorry, this is Jeff Nelson. When we have a deficit budget, how do we make up for the budget, or where's the cash come from? Does that imply a draw on the?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So in years, well, luckily last year we had some great surprises that helped us kind of pull out of that. And then 2 years ago, we actually we were in the black. So then our previous deficit budget was then covered because we were in the black instead of in the red. So typically in recent years, those are how those things have been covered. I don't have the answer for how to get that up. I don't. Jeff, the other Jeff Newcomb, Jeff Newcomb.
The other Jeff. I'm the other Jeff. So we kind of addressed this a little bit when we had our financial meeting before downstairs. How can this be funded? Obviously, one option is to pull from the endowment. That's kind of a short-term thing, and that doesn't lead in a good direction. We have had some excellent response from capital campaigns here. The windows that we've got here, we did those, and we had a wonderful response. It's a great congregation. Some of the other options that we're looking at is selling part of the parking lot. That's come up in building and finance and negotiations with the city. The city is interested in buying a piece of the parking lot at the far end there. So we're in negotiation with them, and honestly, if the city is willing to maintain and plow that piece of the parking lot, personally, I would sell it to them for $1. But that's just me, and that's something that should come before the full congregation for some kind of a vote on that. Another idea that has come up is to say, hey, why don't we share the building with another congregation? And that's a potentially difficult thought for maybe some other people, and it's one of those things where it may be, oh yeah, it sounds like a good idea, and then when you get to the actual practice of it and say we're going to split this 50-50 kind of thing or something, the proof is in the pudding, so we will have to select carefully who we're sharing with.
Thank you, Jeff. Steve?
Steve Skippers. It's great to be able to say I'm responding to the Jeffs. So I think you showed a slide of about 8 years of increasing deficits. And every year in the annual meeting, we get greatly discomforted. And we worry about our church, and we worry about the deficits. But yet we don't seem to be able to put together plans or do things. And I say we, not the royal we, but the congregational we, don't seem to be able to move forward. Some people speak of this as a burning platform where you can't just tolerate this. But we're able to because every year we vote money out of the endowment. And then the other 364 days of the year, we forget about the fact that we're in a deficit. I don't think we can stand $100,000 deficit and have the checking account not come up negative at some point during this year. My suggestion is that we authorize some short-term, not the entire year, expenditure from the endowment in order to cover so we don't bounce our checks. Maybe that's $50,000, but then somehow, and I'm open to someone picking this date, that we establish a date where we will have a plan moving forward, and Jeff talked about some of the things we could do, parking lot. These are all kind of tactical things, but I think there's a plan for putting the church, we need a plan for putting the church on a sounder foundation. Part of that is the work of the transition team, but it's really the work of the entire congregation. So I could see some sort of partial allocation from the endowment fund to get us through this year, a stopgap measure like our Congress does all the time, but with the idea that we promise ourselves that on that date, we're going to get back together and we're going to review our work. And I do really mean the entire congregation needs to be involved in this. And I don't know, Pastor Becky, do you have some thoughts on, as we go forward in 2022, about that plan and how? I'm done.
And Jeff just presented a solid idea, but I want to just remind everybody that we do have a motion on the table, so we have to probably wrap that up, vote on it, and then if that becomes a motion, we can proceed in that manner. How about Facebook, YouTube, anything in regards to budget? Okay, they're all working themselves out. Lovely. Thank you, Amber. All right, any more discussion on the proposed deficit budget right now? All right, let's go ahead and vote. I'll repeat the motion is to approve a deficit budget for 2022 of negative $96,856. All in favor? Opposed? 3 noes. Heather? Abstained? 1 abstained? 3 abstained. Okay, motion carries. Steve, do you want to present furthermore how to, do you want to elaborate any more on your proposal? Or, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I just wanted to make sure that we took care of that.
Actually, that's just my idea. If anybody agrees with it, I invite them to turn that into some sort of motion.
Russ?
I think it's helpful to point out that at the beginning of, Russ Armstrong? I think it's helpful to point out that at the beginning of COVID, there was a payroll plan with the government that we applied to and were able to cover payroll expenses. When I first joined the board, and Pastor Craig was still here, one of the first things he brought up in the first meeting is that we probably would not meet payroll unless we did something. The doing something amounted to I don't even know that what we did was legal in the church. I don't think it was. We took a loan from the endowment fund with the intent of paying it back. And the payback was hopefully going to be the payroll funds that we got from the government. Well, we used those payroll funds, and then we never got around to paying that back. So that's why we were in the black that year, because we were able to get help from the government. We've had some generous donations that have helped us in the past. But I agree with the comments. I think one of the primary things that this congregation has to do, and I mean everybody, has to buy into the idea that we determine how we can fundraise in a more creative manner than what we've been doing. Because what I've seen is we hold these meetings and then we go away and nothing further happens, and we can't count on having a pastor come in and solve our problems for us. I don't care which pastor, pick one, because that's what we've done in the past. I think it's really, am I getting my 2 minutes?
Yep.
Okay. It's important that we get together as a congregation and focus on any kind of fundraising we can do to take care of this deficit. And I support bringing funds in, but let's start right now and figuring out how each of us can come up with ways to help support this church if we want to keep it.
And that actually, thank you, Russ, just reminded me of something that I don't even believe was very clearly communicated with the congregation. So the PPP loan, which I believe is what you were referring to help with payroll costs, which was in 2020, we applied for that, we received it, and we were forgiven for all of it. So that's very lovely that we actually don't have to pay that back. So we qualified for full forgiveness on that loan. All right. Becky.
So, in light of this conversation, specifically the one about the budget, I think this becomes really important, because what we're talking about now is to kind of mimic what Russ was saying, I believe, and you all get to disagree with me because it's simply my opinion, that this is a pivotal point in the life of this congregation. When you go back and look at those graphs, what you'll see is that over the course of at least the last 5-6 years, maybe even longer, that the staff has, and the program staff and everyone has done an excellent job of staying within the budget that you gave them. Okay? And you'll also notice that the congregation as a whole did not keep up their end of the covenant by giving the amount of money that they approved and said that they would. Okay? And this is not a blaming thing. This is a let's see this clearly. Okay? And so now, the fact that we got out of last year because some people died and left us huge chunks of money that we weren't expecting is the only reason we're not struggling with how to meet payroll and all of that from even this last year. And so what happens next is not my call. Now, my job is to put some questions in front of you and to offer some guidance on processes on how you can get there. But this is not my issue, this is yours, okay? And so I want to do everything I can to support you to look at it and to decide how you want to respond to it. But this has to be owned by the people in these pews, okay? You can probably kick this can down the road a little bit longer if you want to keep drawing down your endowment to do that, okay? I have a very difficult time having us talk about deficits when we have $3 million sitting in endowment. What we have is an income stream problem. We don't have a lack of money, okay? And I think this meeting on the 6th of all the people who will be sitting on councils and boards and a couple of the committees as well is extremely important, not only so that everybody gets on the same page and we can function together and all of that, which is the original intent of this meeting. There's also going to have to be some discussion about what the leadership in this congregation wants to do now. And please remember that we're walking into this meeting. As of today, when this meeting ends and Audra's tenure is over, we do not have a moderator. I can't do that. You don't want me to do that, and I won't, and I can't. So what's that say? Right? What does it mean that role has been so difficult, or for whatever reason, that no one wants to step into that leadership position? And then what does that mean for you as a congregation? Right? I think Steve has the right idea. Again, just my opinion. And I think that Building and Finance is starting to think about how can we do this differently. And here's what I can tell you. If you read, right, if you go to some places that talk about churches and congregations and tenure of congregation, all of that, okay? Again, please note, you're not exceptional in this issue. All mainline denominations, except for a few congregations that are peaking, which rarely last, by the way, everyone is struggling with the same thing. And the ones that are figuring it out are the ones who are coming at this with a completely creative approach, that there are no wrong answers. What can we do completely differently? Who can we collaborate and partner with? Right? But there has to be a plan. And so I think this is the beginning of that conversation, because it's the leadership that has to create that plan. And so when council starts to come together, there's a lot of things on your plate. And I think the most pressing issue is we have a ton of transition work to still do that we couldn't do because we spent the year, and Audra will attest to this, we spent last year putting out a lot of fire after fire after fire after fire. It's very difficult to get momentum. This is not going to be any different. And so it's hard to talk about getting all the transition work done when right now we have a budget that makes it pretty clear that if nothing changes, we won't be able to meet payroll all the way through the year, right? And so, again, I'm not, you pay me to tell you what I see, and you pay me to ask the questions. And so, I don't think that you're at a point where it is going to be good for you to go home from today and not worry about it again until next year. I think that's going to cause you an incredible amount of pain in the long haul. So I don't know what the plan is because it's not mine to make. It's mine to help you create, right? But I'm not going to, I won't be here in 2 years to live with the plan, right? And so y'all are going to have to own that, whatever that plan is. And not doing anything is a plan, right? And so the only thing I want to say, again, that will, about, well, this is just a really pivotal meeting. It's a pivotal time of decision-making for the leadership of this congregation. And I think that we all will know more about what might happen or what needs to happen or what you all have the stomach to do together after that meeting.
Nancy, can I just give you this microphone so you don't have to crawl out? Nancy has something to say.
First, I think we all have... Nancy Henny. First of all, I'm going to do this. First of all, I think we all want to thank Audra for an exceptional... exceptional leadership during the past 2 years. She works full-time. She has not missed a step, and thank you very much. I do have a motion that I want to make. I know that we are going through a time of transition. I know that there are former members of our church who are not attending because they don't like the transition time. There are members of our church who have left and they have found a new home. So even though it's going to take time and it may not be an appropriate time, I want to make a motion that we form a search committee and start our search for a new seated pastor. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Henning has made a motion. Patty Enzi has seconded it. Is that Tanya back there? Okay, so you were going to second. Is that what you were going to say? All right, any discussion? Josh Dyer. Make sure you say your name.
Joshua Dyer. Is that not? I saw plans that I think I got a letter at one point.
Get a little closer.
Sure, I saw plans and I thought I got a letter at one point stating like we had this committee kind of set up and who was on it. Are we not doing this? Have we? None of this has happened. This is not part of the plan.
I believe you're referring to the transition team.
Okay. Thank you.
Russ Armstrong.
Russ Armstrong. Nancy, it's an interesting proposal in motion. The question is, and I know Pastor Becky will support this concept because I've heard her say it several times, that she's here to prepare us to call an interim pastor, and there's things that need to be done first. And I'm thinking, this is just off the top of the head because it hasn't really been discussed before, but maybe we can walk and chew gum at the same time, and it may be helpful to have that interim senior pastor search committee not to be necessarily on a search immediately, but be formed and start working toward that goal so that when we are ready to move on, we've already covered a lot of the groundwork that has to take place when you're looking for somebody. And the reason I say that is because we lost Pastor Craig in May, It was his last.
Right, May was his release.
And it took us till December to get an interim. And that's a long time. That was frustrating because we weren't able to get through the processes that we had to do within the organizations we work with. So I recognize the task that Pastor Becky has in front of her. And I don't want to interfere with us getting ready to get the right pastor, but I do think it's worthwhile to consider this motion in a favorable manner.
Thank you, Russ. Shirley?
This question is from Jeff Griffith. Pam Griffith asks if there will be a congregational meeting after the March 6th leadership meeting.
If there will be one, there isn't one planned right now, Pam. No. There's no congregational meeting scheduled until next annual meeting as of right now. I'm sure that there will be some that will be required throughout the year. Oh, right, you're right. Yes, Patty.
Patty NZ, since I second the motion, I think I need to say why I second the motion. I was literally appalled that we did not have a search committee formed for finding an interim pastor. Just because we're going through transition doesn't mean we can't have a party go out, listen to prospective pastors, find out what their philosophies are, see if they're even fitting in with us. Who knows? We're on a journey, people. We have to start the journey at the start button. We may have pauses as we're on our journey, as we all know, but if we don't have a search committee actively going out and looking at people, we may never find them.
Thank you, Patty. Mary?
Mary Newcomb. I've been on search committees both here and on the conference level, and as desperately as we all want a settled pastor, I do not believe we're ready to establish a search committee. We've got work to do before we know who we are, what we want, who we want. And until we do that, a search isn't going to do us any good. I mean, we may find somebody, but we won't have prepared ourselves and them for what we actually need, and we won't solve our problems. So that's my opinion.
Can I speak to this right now? Would that be okay? Okay. Oh, okay. I have 2 minutes. All right. So 3 things come to mind. I'm not for this motion for 3 reasons. One, we have an involvement issue in the church. We don't have a moderator to lead us through even finding a search committee. People don't want to sign up to do stuff. Who's going to sign up to be on a search committee? Second, if you go on the UCC Employment Opportunities website, you will find, as of probably a month ago, there are 372 openings in the UCC alone in this nation. I don't think anybody's ready to find us. The supply is way less than the demand. There's not anybody out there. You could start, and hopefully we'll find somebody. That's why we are lucky to have Lindsay, and we are lucky to have Becky. And I forgot my 3rd thing, so there you go. Lucky you. And my 2 minutes is up. All right, Steve.
Stephen Craig Skippers. I speak in favor of the motion, and the reason I speak in favor of the motion is not that I do believe we do need to have discernment as to who we are and why pastors have left. But I don't think it's wise to do this sequentially. I think the search committee can get started, can start to look at the UCC employment. I think there is a natural cycle to people moving, and I don't want to prolong the time period that we are in interim. And I'll just say in passing, I believe one of the reasons it's hard to get a moderator is it's extremely difficult to have that job during an interim period because nobody can pick on the senior pastor. The moderator becomes the lightning
Y'all have
rod.
been great, honestly.
So anyway, I speak in favor. I think we should get a search committee together, and they may not be able to proceed until we get through discernment, but I don't see the two as being entirely sequential.
Thank you, Steve. Carol?
I'm Carol Freeman, and I'm speaking against. I think what I haven't heard, and so I'd like to offer, is that the first thing a search committee does is create a profile of who we are and what we expect in our senior pastor. And I think if you look back at the last 10 years, we've had a lot of pastors leave. So that might not make the most attractive profile if we're able to say we have an interim pastor who has taken us through processes so that we know who we are, we know what we need, and we know the kind of person we're looking for. Even with 372 openings, I think we will have a much better chance of finding the right person. I know that people in this room are willing to serve on a search committee. But I think before we can be effective as a congregation in search, we need to do more work on ourselves.
Thank you, Carol.
I have several Facebook comments. Let's see. From Linda Shear, I agree that we need to have a search committee started right away. It takes so long to find a pastor and hire one. From Shavana Marakid, how do we get on committees? From Carol Dyer, we don't know what we are looking for. No pastor is going to accept a parish who doesn't know who they are. And let's see, Siobhan is saying, what committees are there? Which ones have openings? What are the responsibilities? I think that's in the annual report.
Right. And she can email the church too.
Okay. And then Gary Hammond just said, we need a search committee right away. So these are the comments coming through.
Thank you, Shirley. Dana.
Dana Martin. I speak in favor of the motion because I believe part of the pulpit committee's responsibility is to start doing that kind of examination and figuring out a profile of who we are and who we need. And I see that all the more because in the last 2 years, I'm not seeing any leadership toward doing those kinds of things. Who is actually leading us to start looking at ourselves and doing the kind of work that we keep talking about? Maybe I'm wrong, but it looks like we're just in neutral and not doing anything. And I believe a search committee would start that process. And there's somebody then that's identified that, yes, this is what we need to be doing. So I speak in favor of the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Any other comments? Christy's going first, Lane, and then you can.
Christy Bailey, and I have served on 2 pastor search committees in this church and others at another church. But when you say form a search committee and go out and look at people and listen to what they're doing, you don't shop at a church, where somebody's working and see if you like them and then ask them to come join us. There's a whole process to looking at profiles. Sometimes there's not profiles available. This last time we had to wait to get 3 names of pastors that we could have as an option for an interim. And prior to that, with Craig, it was 3 or 4 at the most for him too. So and those names have to be given to us. It's not like we have this directory of 9,000 people we can choose from. It's a process that has very few people for very large amounts of openings. So it doesn't make sense to not know who we are before we start looking for this needle in the haystack. because there just aren't that many people. We have to look really, really good because they can say no. We can really, really want them, and they can say, forget you guys. You know, you got some work to do. And I think we need to get that work done before we start searching.
Thank you, Christy. Lane?
Lane Poremski. I guess I'm not in favor of the motion either, because just based off a financial standpoint, I can't, just from that, just that side, we have that problem to start looking at. I'm not sure we really want or have the capacity to take on, try and speed up that process as is. I had something else to say and I don't remember what it was.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm like shivering. All right, any more discussion on the motion presented? No, Becca, okay. Nancy, would you mind restating your motion just to make sure before we do the vote that it's clear, okay?
I make a motion that we select a search committee and begin the process of selecting a settled pastor.
All in favor? I think we're going to have to do a show of hands. Could I have just a second counter here with me? Jeff, since you're staying up, can you I'll count two, but I just want to make sure we have this accurate, okay? So please raise your hands high and dry. I had 19. Okay. And then you can put your hands down. Yep, they're going right now. Yep. You said you had one? That's all right. One no? Can I get an in-house vote on no? Now I got 19. I got 19. Okay. Can you tell me what? Hold on just a second. So how many? 6 and 6. Oh, you have. It's even. 6 for and 6 against. 2 no's and 2 heads. And then do you have any yes? Do you have any yes? We're just going to wait for the online votes to trickle in. Is my math right there? Yep. I'm sorry? Sure. Can I give him the mic? That might be quicker.
If I'm not mistaken, the moderator can vote only to break a tie.
Okay, so then I'll take my vote off. Okay. I'll take my vote off. We have 25 yes and 26 no. The motion does not carry. All right. Now Becky left. She has the next part. Yes, Becca.
So it would be helpful for Becca to hear this as well. Becca Peterson. I know that we have a church full of people who want success in all capacity, from littles to bigs, whatever it is, but it feels like this financial situation, we're asking people that have expertise in 75 different areas, like professionals, everything, such a smart, giving group of people. How could we possibly know how to solve something of this magnitude. You know, we don't have a $150,000 bake sale every year. And so I do think it's our responsibility, but we really need strong guidance and leadership from the people that are trained and studied and full-time in this. You know, everybody else has, you know, this is part of their whole life investment. But from a professional standpoint, we really need people to guide that and have investment in that as well. And I think that's why the called senior pastor thing might have even been a topic, that there is a level of investment when you're here for a long time and not an interim, and like investment guidance, you know, giving, like, I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. Is my 2 minutes up yet? Teasing. Yeah, I know. Done, cut her. What I'm trying to say is I think everyone will put in the work. It's not for lack of love and effort and work, but it feels at times like there's no guidance and leadership on what the heck we're supposed to do. And I know we're supposed to figure that out, but how do we figure that out if we're not the experts in it? Okay, done.
Becky, did you have a comment? Oh, okay, yes, well, they're sorting that out, Jeff.
And so we're done with that. I was going to move on to basically come back to what Steve was talking about, to say, hey, okay.
Okay, I didn't know what they were talking about, sorry.
So, I'm not, I deeply appreciate all of that, okay? And I don't think that this is necessarily the space, unless, I don't know, I guess you invite me to suggest, I understand this happens in every interim, that when things don't move as quickly as we all want them to move, and that would include me, I don't want to be here forever either, that there is a level of frustration, and we are not, myself included, but I think we're not the best at communication, right? And I think that there's been an intention to not raise alarm flags unnecessarily as we dealt with one crisis after another over this last year. We started to have congregational conversations, and then we stopped. Council made the decision that we weren't going to gather if there was food, and we weren't going to do any of that, so that put a halt to those, right? I'm not going to defend myself because I don't believe I need to, but I am happy to explain to the extent that that's helpful. And so the fact that we're split down the middle over that vote, right, sorry, I had to go to the bathroom, so I missed it, is very concerning to me. Because division is one thing we don't need more of. And this is literally down the middle, defeated by one vote, right? Is that what we said? And so I don't know if that's of concern to you, but that's of concern to me. Because if this congregation does not have confidence in the fact that I can do the things that you need me to do, then I shouldn't be here. It's really that simple. And am I up? Okay, sorry. And so I have a grave concern about that. Again, I don't think you're done, and I don't think that and I do know the conversations that we need to have, and I do know that we have a lack of engagement across the board, which has been part of the issue for all year and will probably continue to be, or I don't know. So I'm not really sure what to do with that, in all honesty. Because if the congregation is divided over whether or not they believe that I'm the person to do this job, that is going to deeply hinder my ability to do my job. And so I'm as divided about responding to the vote as the vote itself, okay? And so I don't know, I don't have anything intelligent to say or add to that, other than even if it is by a simple margin of one vote, I think the decision will have to be made in individual hearts and minds here about whether you want to continue to be supportive or not, based on how you feel about it, I guess. But it gives me great, so I'm just going to say one more thing, and then it's all yours, Patty. I have concern about the fact that half of you have absolutely no faith in my ability to lead you through the rest of the interim. And so that will give me pause as well, okay? Because I think it should give us all pause. So that's all I need to say. Go ahead.
Patty Enzi, I don't think this was directed at any one person. I think it's just that we, as a congregation, need to just start the process. You know, it could take us 2 years to find somebody, you know, as well as what, you know, Christy said, the process, however many other congregations are looking for a person. This wasn't directed at any one person. This is just to start the process, because we feel we're in limbo too. So, you know, who knows? I don't know if you are even available for us to reach out to you to become. So there you go. So it's just to start the process.
Thank you, Patty. Steve?
Yeah, hello, Stephen Skippers. So I voted in favor of the resolution or the motion, but I did not look at that as a vote of confidence or lack of confidence on our interim pastor at all. I think Patty said it well. I think that you might look at this as a sense that the congregation wants to move forward, sees a need to move forward, and my prior conversation about endowment funds was along that line of getting a plan put together, not a solution necessarily, but a timeline. I think the uncertainty is people not being able to see what that discernment or that timeline looks like between now and going out and really getting a search committee active. So apologies if this was taken as a personal vote of confidence or no confidence. That was not what I voted for, one way or the other.
Thank you, Steve. Lucy?
Hi, Lucy Manus. I totally agree with Steve. In fact, I'm going to change my vote. Oh, well, this was not, I would if I could, because this was so totally not directed against Pastor Becky. I mean, yes, we need a search committee. I don't know a lot about it, but I am sorry. Well, I do. The other thing is, you know, we say we need time to get to know ourselves. Well, you know, that's, to get to know yourself, I'm still in the process of getting to know myself. And I'm not telling you my age, but I'm up there. My only thought is a good starting place to get to know ourselves is we are an open and affirming church. And I think, well, I don't think I know, there's some issues, and I mean, I think that's a point for us to start. And if someone has problems with that, I mean, you know, you've got to look at it. Do I want to stay in this church? So again, that would be a starting point for me to get to know ourselves. Are we behind that? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy. Phil? Oh, I'm sorry. I think maybe Shirley next. Okay, Phil, go ahead.
I'm Phil Koenig, and I don't think I want to tell you how I voted on the motion because it's irrelevant. This is by no means a vote of lack of confidence for what Becky has done while she's here. I understand why people want to have a search committee. I recall before getting married the first time that my then fiance, then my wife, did a lot of things to sort of spritz herself up before the wedding.
Where is this going?
TMI, Phil.
Continue on, Phil. Continue on.
Wait, I haven't said anything. Well, let me have it. All right. Well, let's change the subject because you seem to think My point is, when I interviewed for my first job as a lawyer, I wore the best clothes I could wear. My hair was cut appropriately, and I didn't wear gym shoes to the interview. In like manner, our church has to be dressed up because the selection of a pastor process entails something approaching a mating dance. Because whoever candidates wants to know a lot of information about our church. As well, I'm about done. And we have to polish up, clean the car, whatever you got to do to put a best foot forward. I understand the reason to want to have a selection process, but I think we have to shine the gold work up first.
Thank you, Phil. Shirley.
These are comments. Linda Shear said maybe we need to request assistance from the synod to help with the search committee.
That's a good point.
Abby Joe says, in the current situation, the church has to be appealing for a pastor to find their calling with us. We need to direct our focus on fixing current issues throughout the church. Carol Dyer says, isn't the leadership meeting the beginning of the process? Shavana Kidd, I don't think a vote to start looking is saying anything at all about Becky's ability to lead us. She is doing a tremendous job. It's just it takes an enormous amount of time to find someone. From Linda Shear, perhaps it would be helpful if everyone in our church could see what they have done so far and what the timeline for the process is. Then she added, I would expect that the search committee would be helpful to Pastor Becky in getting the mission of our church and the type of pastor we want. Then I just got one that I haven't even read yet from Jeff Griffith. We feel that a congregational meeting after the March 6th leadership retreat is imperative to get everyone engaged and keep us all informed. To Steve Skipper's point, it will be an occasion for discussion rather than waiting for another year. We need communication and transparency. From me, how can you...
Shirley, thank
Shirley
you,
Morton,
Shirley.
how can you have a search committee when we don't have money to begin with? We don't know how much we can offer, and that's part of the package with the search. That's my question. I'm confused as to how we can do that.
All right. Russ.
Russ Armstrong. I think from this vote, I think the positive that could come out of it, and I agree with Steve, you should not take this as a leadership question. I think what it does tell us is that it would be helpful, and probably one of the first things that should be discussed in your leadership with the new council is what are the things that need to be done to take us on the path to a new pastor, and if we can timeline those, I think that would be extremely helpful in moving forward with all the issues that I know you're trying to accomplish, and to help focus where we need to be and which of those issues rise to the top and which of them can be dealt with later. And that will helpfully satisfy some of the members who are concerned about where are we going and when we're going to get there, and how long that process might take.
Thank you, Russ. Mary.
This is a comment from Diane Moore from YouTube. If we have had a lot of problems to be solved this last year, then we need to know about them. We need to be kept informed. Not all of us are involved to know what is going on.
Okay, thank you. Jeff?
And again, I was going to go in a kind of a different direction, but kind of maybe related. And that was that I was going to make a motion that we meet again on April 14th, which is a Sunday, and go over the things that are going to happen at the leadership retreat and review ideas to make ourselves, I'll say, more solvent, to get to a place where we can have a balanced budget and not let it just sit around for another year, but let's meet in April and see what we can do.
Heather, did you get that?
April 14th, I'm informed, is not Sunday.
Friendly amendment. Jeff, did you hear that from Becky?
Say that again.
We have to look at the church calendar.
Oh, all right. I would.
Within
can I
90
modify
days.
My motion? In April. In April.
In April. Okay. So Jeff, could you maybe just clearly just redefine your motions just so Heather has that accurate in the minutes?
Okay. So I would move that we meet in April to go over what's happening at the leadership retreat and also to figure out ways that we can become more solvent as a church.
All right. Heather, you got that? Okay. All right. All in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Online looking okay? And, okay. All right. Motion carries. I think we're good, Pastor Becky.
Okay, we've been sitting a long time. Why don't we stand for this one, okay? I'm just kidding. Let us pray. Gracious God, we thank you and we offer our praise for your presence within us and among us as we gather as your people. We thank you for all of those who spoke words of wisdom today and for all of those who are praying silently in their hearts. And we ask that this continue to be the incentive and a motivator and a fire within us to listen more deeply to not only what we want for this congregation, but what you want for this congregation. And may that always be a part of our discernment as we move forward. And finally, as part of this prayer, after we say amen, we especially thank you for Audra and for her leadership during an incredibly difficult year. Her calm leadership, her compassion, her sensibility, and her evenness has been exceptional and incredibly helpful. And this congregation is indebted to her. I thank you for all of those who have led through this year. Again, it has not been easy. And I just ask you to continue to bless them as they stay or go. And we pray for all of those who will be coming into leadership. As we move forward. And we ask this in your many names. Amen. Now, before we adjourn, because that's next, right? Wait, no, well, hold on. Heather, where's Heather?
Hit him in the hand. I probably can't say this without crying, so we're going to miss you. And on behalf of council and everybody in the church, this is for you.